everyone. This is English 3311, Studies in Poetry. My name is Paul Kinsley. Welcome. So this is a summer course. What does that mean? It means we're going to be compressing about 14 to 15 weeks worth of material into about 4.5. So summer courses, if you've never taken one before, they tend to be rather fast moving, and the reading can sometimes feel like a lot. That's because we're trying to cover an equal amount of ground in a shorter period of time. And if you think about it, you're getting the same credit for this summer course as you get in a regular long semester, fall or spring. And so, logically, the work that you do for that credit has to be roughly the same. So you just have to be prepared to buckle down and get through the material. And I'm here to help you, of course, do that. And these videos that I'm going to make are, I hope, a way to kind of get you acclimated to the material and have a good sense of what we're doing and why we're doing it. All right, the other thing, of course, in addition to being a summer class, this is an online class. So for those of you who have never done online, that is itself a challenge, and you have to kind of approach it in a very deliberate way in order to be successful at it. I think the old saying, out of sight, out of mind, sometimes applies, and students who are enrolled in an online course because they're not physically going to a classroom and seeing a professor talk about this and that, they start to kind of forget that there's a ongoing sort of schedule of reading and work that has to be done in order for you to get a passing grade. And so sometimes, right, you see students sort of disengaging with the material and not being involved, and then suddenly at the last minute when they realize, oh my God, this is, we're days away from the course being over, and then suddenly there's a flurry of activity. So don't let that be you. And I think that the general rule is, think of it like a garden. You've got to keep the weeds out of the garden. You've got to keep, kind of everything fresh. You don't want to kind of walk away from your garden and come back weeks later. It's going to be overgrown mess. So in the same way, a constant activity, right? Just sort of like having a good rhythm for this class is a good idea. And that's why we have, for example, our discussion boards, which are going to be our sort of bulletin board for our class, where we can discuss the material and ask questions and make connections and make observations. And I'll be reading it and participating. And of course, you're required to participate there. It's part of the grade. But that is one of the lifelines between, you and me, and between you and your fellow students, right? So that you're all kind of feeling like you're kind of working together towards a goal. One thing about this course that you might find different is the way it's being arranged. Now, this course is one of the so-called genre courses in the English major, although many people take it who aren't English majors. But the genre courses are intended to be genre-specific surveys that go over multiple historical periods. So, for example, if you were taking studies in dramatic literature, you might read something, some old Greek play by Sophocles. You might read something from Shakespeare. You might read plays from the 18th century, the 19th century, and so on. In the same way, this class is going to be covering not all of poetry. We're not going to go as far back as Beowulf or Chaucer, for example. But we are going to go back to the early modern period, which some people call the Renaissance, which is, roughly 16th century. So that's about 400 years or so of territory that we've got to cover. And normally in these kinds of survey courses, even at the upper level, the reading material is usually arranged in chronological order. And I've done that myself for many years, but in this class, I have a different way of approaching the material. So for this class, we're going to be going backwards, we are going to be moving in reverse chronology from the most recent poets and poetry to the most historically removed poetry. So we're going to be going, not back to the future, back to the past, I guess, and moving along that way. Now, you might say, well, why do that? I think one of the ways this sort of arrangement appeals to me is that it gives you a sense of reconstructing a sort of a trail backwards. Rather than a typical survey where you have to make one big, huge leap back to whenever, 400, 500, 800 years ago, and then move forward. In this class, it's almost going to be like a kind of archaeological dig. We're going to be going deeper and deeper and deeper and further back. And for each sort of step backwards that we go, in your mind, you'll be able to sort of, trace from where we started in the present day, going all the way back to Shakespeare in the 16th and 17th centuries. So that's the idea. It's reverse chronology. So let's go through the syllabus, okay? The syllabus, this is our course page, by the way. I've logged on to it. And if you go to the start page, you'll see that the syllabus is there. Right, hold on. There it is. If you click on it, right, it will show you the syllabus like that. And you can print it out. Usually might be a good idea to print out a syllabus, but I leave that choice up to you. There's two descriptions there. One comes from the catalog, and one is an extended description that comes from me, where I say basically what we're going to do, basically two things: study the history of poetry, and also what poetry is and how to read it, how to understand it, the forms that it takes, and so on. So there's a sort of a historical and a formal side to the class. Then below that, you'll see the course outcomes. Those are pretty straightforward. Basically, if you pass this class successfully, you'll be a better reader, you should be a better writer, you should understand a bit more how to use sources, something like that. All right. As for the book, there's one book in this class. It's a big, thick book. It's called the Norton Anthology of Poetry, and that should be available in the UHD bookstore. Okay, moving on to the reading schedule. The reading schedule, I hope, is pretty straightforward. We've divided this class by weeks. Now, of course, because it's an online course, we're not meeting on particular days. But I've sort of set up the reading schedule according to the days of the class, Monday through Thursday, just to kind of give you a sense of how to space out the reading and how I've spaced out the reading. You'll see that when I use that abbreviation NAP, that just means Norton Anthology of Poetry. And if I give a poet's name, for example, if I say Lee Young Lee, Dionisio Di Martinez, Evan Boland, and Margaret Atwood, all poems in NAP, that just means look up those poets, and you can look them up. They're alphabetically in the index in the back if you want to find where they are in this big, thick book. You just go to the index, and you can see the name, and that'll tell you the page where their selections begin. And when I say all poems, you'll go to, for example, Lee Young Lee. You go to his section, which is near the end, of course, remember, because we're going backwards through the anthology. And you'll see 2 or 3, I think, poems from him that are there. And when I say all poems, just read those 2 or 3 poems that are there. For a lot of the poets that are included in this anthology, they don't really have more than maybe 5, usually 10 pages is a lot for a poet in this anthology. So you may see a lot of names on here, but the reading is going to be for each poet, only a matter of a few pages. Now, of course, when you're reading poetry, you have to go slow and you have to reread, as I'm going to show you in my next video, which is going to introduce the class more sort of the intellectual side of things rather than the procedural side of things. But yeah, you got to read slow. So even, 10 pages of reading, you might think you can do that in a snap, but, you have to take it slow. All right. So All of the poems in our reading schedule come from the Norton Anthology. The only exception is our first day today. Because I want to start from the present day, I've included poems from people who are living in Houston, and in fact, one of whom teaches at UH downtown. Her name's Robin Davidson. She was the previous poet laureate of the city of Houston. I have 3 poems by her, and I have 2 poems by Deborah Deep Mouton, who's the current poet laureate of Houston. And one of the poems that I've included from her is this astonishing text that she wrote after Hurricane Harvey came through the area last year, and it's quite remarkable. And there's also a video that she made of it, and I include a link to that video on the course page. All right, so it should be pretty clear how the reading schedule is laid out, but if you have any questions, be sure and ask me. All right, next thing I'll say, the discussion forums. So for each week of the class, there will be a discussion forum. So if there's 5 weeks roughly, and for each of those 5 weeks, there's going to be 5 discussion forums, 1 in each week. And they're going to open on Monday, and except for the last week, they're going to close on Sunday. And during that span of time, I'm asking you to, with your fellow students, write about and respond to the reading that you're doing. You can ask questions, you can make observations. Don't get off focus, right? You want to, it should be like a classroom discussion where we're looking at the texts, we're asking questions, we're making observations, looking at details. You can quote a little bit and then maybe analyze a bit. You don't have to write full-blown essays. That's for, later and in other assignments. But you do have to be talking about the reading that we're doing, and you have to be engaged with it and writing some substantial information. So those will open up, and you have to kind of go in there and participate. Now, the minimum requirement for each of the discussion forums is 5 posts. So you're going to need to write at least 5 substantial, it's not an essay, but a good solid paragraph or 2. And I want you to start 2 threads, and you just do that by you go into the discussion forum, you click on it, you click the where it says create thread, you click on that, you give a title, and then you write your post and hit submit. If you want to reply to somebody else's post, then you just you're into that post, and you'll see a reply button, and you just hit that and write your post, and again hit submit. And for each of the 5 discussion forums, you're going to need to do that at least 5 times. Now, remember, that's a minimum. You can do more. That's, kind of an expected thing. But I don't want to say it's, I don't want to kind of make it seem like that the grade is based on the number of posts that you make. Because it ultimately, as I say in the syllabus, where I talk about the grading rubric for the discussion forums, ultimately, it's a qualitative standard, but you do have to make those 5 posts during the availability of the forum. And then if you go more, right, but they're substantial posts, then of course the grade will reflect that. If you don't have the minimum number of posts, obviously the grade will reflect that. One last point about discussion forums. I've noticed that sometimes students wait till the last minute to post on the discussion forums, and if you think about it, it's like going to a party 5 minutes before it's over. So where's the fun in that? You want to kind of arrive at the party early enough to talk with everyone and have a good time. So in the same way, I want you to kind of spread out your contributions during the discussion forum so that people can read what you're writing. If everybody contributes in the last half an hour from 11:30 to 11:59 on Sunday night, people are posting so quickly, they're not really having time to read what each other are saying. So if you spread it out, it's better for you and it's better for everybody else. And just so you know, it does impact the grade if you cram things at the end. And as I say, it's better to get the minimum number of posts than not, but if you cram them in at the end, that does impact the grade a bit. So just so you know. All right. So you'll see on the syllabus schedule, you'll see the discussion forums. It's sort of like this window of opportunity. It opens up and becomes available, and then it's open for a few days, and then it closes. And just so it's totally clear, once a discussion forum closes, it is closed. That is it. And I grade what's in there. So again, all the better reason for you to kind of participate early and often, so that you're not pushing things to the last, few hours, and then maybe you have an emergency, God forbid, or there's a problem with your computer or whatever. When you kind of push things to the last minute, your margin of error goes away. So it's much wiser for you to kind of spread things out. So I don't open up the discussion forums once they're closed. Once they're closed, that's it. And then, shortly thereafter, except for the last week, the next discussion forum will open, and the whole process starts over again. So let me know if you have any questions about that, but it should be pretty straightforward. Just so you know, on personal emergencies. Now, I understand that sometimes emergencies occur, and if you have an emergency, I hope you can take care of it. If you want to let me know that there's something that's going to impact your performance in the class, that's up to you. But just remember, either the work is done for the class and you get the credit for it, or it's not. So you have to sort of have it in the frame of mind that the work has to get done. If you kind of don't turn anything in for the entire class and then you want to turn all the material in at the very last minute, again, that's not the way these courses work. So you can't pass a course that way. Just in the way, if this were a face-to-face class, you can't skip the whole semester and just attend the last couple weeks and expect to get credit for the class. It's the same sort of way. So you have to be constantly engaging with the class. Also, remember, if you haven't done, if you haven't been posting on the discussion forums, if you haven't turned in essays, rest assured, I can see that you haven't. You know that you haven't. We both know that you haven't. If you want to ask for help, of course, I'm here to help you. I want everyone to succeed in the class. But at the same time, of course, I have to also uphold the sort of fair standards and rules for the class. So again, I can't make exceptions. If it's a rule for one, it has to be a rule for all. If you're late with something and you're worried or whatever and you need help, you can always reach out to me. That's fine. But of course, there's going to be late penalties, for example, for late essays that when you turn in. And that's, again, just to encourage everybody to kind of buckle down and focus and get the work done when it's due. All right, in terms of the writing for the class. So there's going to be the discussion board posts. There's going to be 5 of them. Those are worth up to 16 points each. So a total of 80 points can be earned in that part of the class. There's going to be 2 essays, one about 4 pages, the second one about 6 to 8 pages. The first one, a close reading, just you and the text. And then the second one, asking you to do a little bit of outside research and bring in some other voices as you analyze a poem or poems. Each of those 2 essays are worth 100 points each. There's going to be a presentation that I'm going to ask you all to do. That can come in the form of a YouTube video like I'm making right now, or it can come in the form of a Prezi or a PowerPoint that you upload to the, we'll use the discussion forum for that. So you can kind of use that to share your presentation. That's going to be worth 40 points. And then there's going to be a final exam that's going to be worth 80 points. It'll have some identifications. Both identify the poet and then also some identifications for poetic terminology, like simile and metaphor, metonymy, enjambment, words like that we'll talk about as the class goes on. So 20 points of identifications and then 2 short 30-point essays. And if you add all that together, that's 400 points. And then the grading scale is just the 90 to 100 scale multiplied by 4, and that's how I determine A, B, C, D, and F. Okay. I think I've said as much as I need to say about the grading. I think that's about it. Let me just say one last thing. It's kind of a necessary but unfortunate thing I have to say. Remember, plagiarism is wrong. It is a very serious academic violation. You should know what it is, and you should know that it's wrong. I don't do do-overs when it comes to plagiarism. If you plagiarize any of the written work for the class, you fail the class. Not just a 0 or something like that, or a do-over. I want to make it totally crystal clear that I'm deadly serious about plagiarism, that you cannot do it. Even a little bit. You can't even do a little bit of plagiarism. There is no little bit of plagiarism. It's like a little bit of murder. There's no little bit of murder. Okay, either you've plagiarized or you haven't. And in fact, over the years, most cases of plagiarism, the student didn't plagiarize the entire paper, just chunks of it. So just remember, you can't do that. Now, if you run into trouble with the essays and you get on page 2 and you feel like you've run out of ideas, ask me. I want to help. You can reach out to me and we can try to figure out things that you can do to develop and extend your argument so that you reach the minimum required length for the papers. But once you've turned something in and it's plagiarized, that's it. You failed the class. And I don't want that to happen. So just remember, if you find yourself tempted because you're confused or whatever, you can always reach out to me and I want to help. But once the paper's turned in, then I go into grading mode, and if there's plagiarism there, the class, you're going to fail the class. And that also goes for the discussion forums. It has happened, unfortunately, in the past where somebody has plagiarized in the discussion forums. They've just been pulling things from the internet and posting them in there. And when I find out that happens, that's also plagiarism in the class, and it's also an F. So just be careful. Don't do it. Don't be tempted. Okay, I think that's all I need to say for now. This has just been the introductory video, just going over the syllabus and the overall sort of shape of the class. You'll see that the way we'll go, you'll see folders appearing on the left-hand side of the course page going week 1, week 2, week 3. And I'll be posting more videos and maybe some little essays that I'll write in there. And of course, I'll also be on the discussion forums talking to you there. All right, so again, everyone, welcome, and I'll see you around. Okay, bye-bye.